the challenges and opportunities for women in gaming and esports in the UAE.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here. It's an interesting one. The minute you talk about women in gaming, the crowd starts to dissipate because maybe it's not so exciting. So believe me, today we're not sitting here to promote women. We're here discussing the very real and authentic topic of how there are various ways in which women have opportunity but also survive big challenges. So I welcome today Arshiya and our two Pavels, Pavel and Pavel, who will be weighing in. This is a good balanced crowd. And I'm going to ask Arshiya to start first. Please tell us more about what you do in this environment.
Well, first off, thanks so much for having me here. I really feel honored to address such an important topic in the esports industry. My name is Arshiya. I am a streamer, an esports host, and I'm the content and community manager for 404 Esports. And of course, I'm a mom as well. That's one of the big jobs that women have to do alongside everything else. And I'm here to better the esports world in the MENA region and hopefully globally as well. And I'm really looking forward to speaking at this panel.
Very good. And I think we'll cover some really important topics in the UAE and MENA environment. But for you, Pavel, could you tell us a little bit more about what you do, especially given the sensitivity and knowledge you have around regulatory frameworks?
Yeah, hi. My name is Pavel. We are running consultancy agency. We are working a lot with different governments in terms of helping them to change the regulation in different industries, in sports industry as well. So we consider that esport is basically the sport in general, and it has the same rules. And I think that we are doing a big job not only to develop diversity in sports, but also to make the esports profitable to the government, more interesting for young kids, for young generation, and I think we can advise something for UAE today.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I think you'll be able to comment more on what are some of the cultural norms within different UAE MENA regions. Pavel, if you could tell us a bit more, what do you do in the gaming and esports space?
So it's Paul, and I'm more commonly known as...
The mic.
My name's Paul. I'm more commonly known as the Prophet. I host what is the biggest gaming industry show in the region called Game Changers on CNBC Arabia, which everyone should watch. But I spent 25 years either building companies or investing in companies. I've been a VC in tech and around gaming for the last couple of decades.
Okay, so my apologies on the Pavel. Thank you, the Prophet Paul. Very good. Okay, I'm going to move over to Arshiya and ask you specifically, within the UAE, since you were born and raised here, what are the perceptions around yourself as a woman in the esports and gaming environment?
Well, one of the major things that we have to struggle with as a woman who wants to be interested in gaming, whether it's on an esports level, on a professional level, or just on content creation, is the stigma against women. And what I mean by this is that women are often faced with social discrimination once they attempt to do something that they deem is more male dominated. So to be put in that field, perhaps some families will be they'll frown upon that. Sometimes they might not encourage you, they might not support your intentions, and because of that, you don't reach your full potential. Because of that, you don't pursue things that you could be doing. It could also affect your future career. A lot of us have gotten careers in esports and gaming, and because of the support and the just the endless encouragement that I received from my family, I was able to be where I am today. Otherwise, it just wouldn't happen. And that's something that I really want to change for other women in the MENA region, in the UAE, to give them that opportunity as well, and to make sure to tell them it's okay to be involved in esports. It's okay to follow your dream in gaming, whether it's male dominated or not. We are going to be changing that, and eventually it's perhaps not going to be just male dominated, and we're going to be seeing a lot of females there as well.
There's also the point, of course, that yes, we should push for a 50-50 or equality, but in reality, realistically speaking, how many women actually want to be in esports and gaming? Is it realistic for us to say it's a half-half?
It is definitely not realistic to say that women want to be esports professionals as much as men. However, we can say that women and men are equal when it comes to gamers. When it comes to gamers, there are just as many women as men. However, on a professional level, females do not want to or do not feel comfortable enough to raise their voice to say that, hey, I'm good at this game and I want to compete in a professional level. There aren't any platforms for them to shine on. Especially here in the MENA region, I don't think we have much. We do have a girl gamer that recently accepted submissions from the MENA region. However, other tournaments I've noticed that they don't include the region at all. And that's not to say that there aren't gamers. Myself, since I work in 404 Esports, we're tournament organizers. So I really wanted to make an all-females tournament. And for that, I need to do some research to see our player base and whatnot. And I was astounded to find that there's an abundance of players, an abundance of groups dedicated to female gaming. All they need is a platform. All they need is to defeat the stigma and to break the barriers. And hopefully we're going to encourage more and more females to enter that professional field.
Slightly controversial, but sometimes, when we say it's a women's only game, then it's illegal to say it's a male only game. So we need to be careful not to go too much against the men in that definition. Paul, given the size of the audience that you talk to, what are some of the trends you see in terms of women in esports and gaming?
I see worrying trends, actually. And I always end up sounding like the bad guy, but I'll try not to here. The reality is, at the gamer level, right, encouraging the average 8-year-old girl to play games, I think this is critically important to fill the top of that funnel. Critically important to get around those stigmas. But at the professional level, I'm not a believer in equality at all. At the professional level, I believe the best players should compete, whether that's a man or a woman or an alien or anything in between, right? So at that professional level, I think it has to be a meritocracy. But there's one step further, which I think no one really discusses, which is the economics of esports at the professional level. Because even today, as mature as the esports scene may be, most of these esports teams don't make money. The majority of them are losing money, and even more so today than even 6 months ago. And my fear is that you get a lot of initiatives that are feel good, like, oh, we're team XYZ, we're gonna field a female esports team. But if that female esports team never turns a profit, never draws a big enough audience or enough sponsors, all you've done, I think, is set women back in the space in the same way that I think like the WNBA struggles. Even though gaming is the great equalizer, men and women compete on the same level. There's no, just because I'm 200 pounds and you're 100 pounds, makes no difference. But the economics still have to work. It has to draw an audience. And if the female esports teams don't, or the female esports players don't, I think there needs to be a frank discussion around why. What's missing? What can we do better?
Thank you for that. Pavel, could you talk a little bit about, from a regulatory perspective, are there any active regulations that prevent women in esports and gaming in the communities that you've spoken to in UAE and MENA?
This is a very good question, actually, because esports is one of the sport which is not covered in regulation in most countries, not in MENA, but all over the world. And it's considered as a sport just a few years ago, I would say, like starting from 10 years ago, and depending on the country to country, and it is just changing. And from a regulatory perspective, you cannot achieve anything regarding sport in general. It has to be different types of motivation, and you have to include as much more people to the sport as possible, because more people are playing and better results they're getting. This situation was like the same stuff was happening in tennis and in soccer when no one was watching ladies tennis in the very very long time ago, I would say. And what was happening? WTA was investing lots of money to make the sport more inclusive. They invested to prize funds. They invested to different social programs. And for now, I would say that tennis is more equal than it was 10 or 15 years 10 or 15 years ago. Of course, there are some influencers like Serena and Venus. They've done lots for sport, but you have to invest and invest more money. And again, you cannot be e-sport player without your video game background. And here I would say that we need to think about more people are playing video games and to make video games more attractive for female. And this is the most essential part, because once again, coming back to what
Arshiya.
yes, what you said, what is happening? Video game players are divided pretty equally. So 60 to 40% of men and women playing video games, but coming to the stats of how much ladies and how much boys wants to be professional players, we see this gap. We were discussing before the stage this gap, and this gap is around 25. Is actually two times higher, and 20% of ladies who are playing video games, they want to be professional, and 45% of boys wants to be professional. So this is the gap which should be covered.
I think you've pointed to something important here where Paul mentioned that funnel. You know, if we're going to start bringing players into the esports world through video games, if we engage more girl players, that's one thing. But I feel quite strongly on that meritocracy, because meritocracy means that I win because I'm a good player, not because of where I come from or who I am. That said, there's also that perception from a cultural norms and social norms perspective is in families, if you're going to be a great player, you have to spend time doing it. So would it be a controversial thing to say that perhaps you as a mother have less time to practice?
This is definitely, we have less time, that is true, but once we are dedicated towards something, we can put the time across, you can be organized. But there is something that I do want to touch up on, I feel is very important to mention, is that you said we shouldn't have girl-only tournaments. I have to disagree with this. I feel like currently, for our situation now, we have to have all-girl tournaments, because this is the point of time where we have to encourage gamers, female gamers in the MENA region to participate. And once that stigma is defeated, once they feel comfortable to expose themselves, then there will be no need for all-girl tournaments. There will be no need for that. There are just going to be tournaments, male or female. And that's why, you have to have all girls currently, but absolutely after some time passes by, it will be obsolete.
When we spoke earlier, you talked about some of the opportunities and benefits of also being a woman in these games and tournaments. What are some of the benefits?
I can't believe you're putting me on the spot here, but I'm just going to say it how it is. If you're a female gamer and they find out you're a female gamer, they hear that feminine voice of yours, oh no, it's a damsel in distress. I must go and I must camp their lane. I have to go help them. Do you need anything? So this is one focus that it can go through. That's the advantage. Let's say you might get free skins. I might be guilty of this a couple of years ago. It might slip that I'm a female. I might get some free things, that might have happened. But that's the advantage, of course. Some women may see that as a disadvantage, of course. Maybe they don't want to be aided. They don't want to be helped. And when they voice their concerns that, they don't need them to be supporting them, they might not agree and they might not abide by their preferences. And it can also go the opposite way, of course. So when they hear that you're a female, go to the kitchen, make me a sandwich and whatnot. It can go either way, of course, and it might not be comfortable for women to receive such responses. I think it's completely fine, because when you're gaming, there obviously is a bit of toxicity, there's a bit of banter, that's embedded in gaming,
Right.
It's normal. However, there's a limit. and that limit should definitely not be crossed.
Okay, thank you for that. Paul, would you like to comment on what you think the advantages of being a guy could be? Could be.
Talk about a minefield of a question. Look, I'm old, so I never got any of the advantages of a guy gamer. My parents also were telling me, don't play video games. So I don't know, I didn't really live it, right? I'm not 20 years old where maybe people pushed me into that career. I'd love to see tournaments dedicated just for old gamers. But I come back to sort of my original thing of who's going to foot the bill, right? Like, it's great to say we want to have tournaments for all female gamers because I agree, it does elevate, it creates something that other girls can look up to, right? Like, I understand the purpose it serves. The question, there's a reason they call me the prophet. What is the dollars and cents? Who foots this bill? Is it charity? Is it government? Is it, right? And can it be profitable, and what's missing if we don't think it can be profitable?
I'd like to answer that if that's okay. So currently it is not profitable enough, as you said. That's correct. But it is slowly and steadily becoming profitable. I don't know if you're familiar with one of our esports representative, G2 Mary. She is a Valorant player from Bahrain who has been recruited by one of the biggest esports teams, G2. And she went from having around 30 viewers on her stream to having over 1,000 overnight because she won one of the biggest Valorant tournaments in the world. So that is definitely profitable. A lot of sponsors are out for her. The Ray-Bans, I believe, is one of them. And because we gave her that exposure, because we gave her that opportunity, let her participate in these all-girls tournament, that's how she got the exposure, and that's how she's becoming profitable. So I think we have to invest, like Pavel said, we have to invest with no return. With any business, you have to invest. You have to lose a bit of money in order to get where you want to be. So I feel like that investment is important for the little while in order to give them that opportunity to shine.
Would you like to respond, Paul?
No, it's a good answer. Look, I don't want to be the one investing today. I'd rather be investing when it's making money, right? That's the challenge. And I think esports has a broader challenge that's not men or women, which is, are we sport and we want to see the best compete? Because today, women would struggle, right? Like, if I put an all-female Valorant tournament together, you wouldn't be getting the best players in the world. You'd be getting the one tier down. Is that what people paid to go see? I don't know. But if you're talking sport, people want to see the best competing against the best. And I hope one day there will be plenty of women at that stage. If it's entertainment, this is where it gets more interesting, right? If we don't care that it's just the best against the best, I think there's an interesting angle to have women as a significant part of the scene, and how you create entertainment and spectacle around that, and appeal to an audience that's male or female, right? Frankly, there's a lot of female entertainment that men watch, not just women watch. And so I think there's huge opportunity today to make money if you think of it as entertainment rather than sport.
Very, very good point. And from a legal regulation perspective, one of the things that I'm curious about is, in esports and gaming, it's okay for us to say that a funnel of attracting people learning games, you can easily say, oh, let's try and get these 8-year-olds to play more games so they'll be great players in esports later. It has a slightly tricky edge to it because you're basically recruiting the youth.
But this is precisely why you don't have an equal number of men and women competing at the professional level. Because when I was 8, I could play as much video games as I wanted. My cousin, who's a woman, obviously, was not encouraged in the same way. So you have at least 2 generations, probably, of girls who were not encouraged from 8 years old. That's between 8 and 40. I probably have 10, 15,000 hours of gaming under my belt. That's a disadvantage that has to be overcome, but I think can only be overcome over time. And I think the investment, the higher value, like impact investment, is those 8-year-old girls.
Brilliant point there, because it is a couple of generations later. It does take time sometimes for things to even itself out. Pavel, have you come across any regulations that restrict age or various other things when it comes to active gamers?
Yes, obviously. Gaming should be regulated, and it should be regulated from to avoid gambling part in gaming for sure. I think that investors are not happy about it, but in general, we should start to avoid it a bit, and we should provide a very clear separation, to make the rules obvious for people at least, because okay, it could be some part like the life is gambling. This is flipping the coin every day, but we have to provide a very strict separation between one part of the gaming and another part of the gaming.
Absolutely. Supervision is required when we have these younger people coming into the game.
About the age perspective, I'm not the big fan of this type of regulation because I'm playing eSport. I'm playing video games by myself, and I'm not harmed with any games, but this is a bit another field for to discuss it. I'm not happy to discuss it right here.
Thank you. I'd really love to put some questions out. Does anybody have one or two questions they might want to pose to anybody here on the stage? No. Thank you very, very much for listening to us, for the different perspectives, and we wish you a great conference.